Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 130 of Two Left Thumbs, your gaming podcast powered by Grayskull. I'm your host, Deft Puppiez, and joining me riding shotgun this week is Mr. Boomstick. How are you, man?
Hey. How you doing, brother? Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to sit down with you. I love the title of the show, Two Left Thumbs. That is fantastic. Didn't realize you had over 130 episodes, which is really good. I mean, that's something to be said about keeping anything that long.
No, thank you. It's not, the name isn't my own, and I was only here from episode 16. I kind of stole the podcast over a long period of time. I got invited on as a guest, and I never left. And then as the show's progressed over the last, I think it's been like 3 years we've been running now. Just over 3 years. I've had the original guests leave because of work and life commitments, and other ones come and other ones go, and I'm just here running the show, talking to people. It's been fun. It's really, really cool. Yeah. So for those playing at home, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I mean, the short story is I'm a retired New York City police officer. I did it for 21 years.
Wow.
And I have been gaming since 1978, since my dad brought home the Atari 2600. And when I retired in 2014, I had a really bad spinal cord injury where I had to have a lot of work done back there. And at that point, when you have that kind of hardware put into you, the job tells you that you're a liability. So I retired, and it was great. It was time for me to go anyway. It just happened to be worked out the way it was. But I've always been a diehard gamer, and I originally my thought process was to get into writing, be a journalist. You know what I'm saying? Because I worked in community affairs. I worked with the community. I worked as a youth officer. So I was always intermingling with people, using video games as a platform to talk with the kids and talk with my fellow peers. Not that they really wanted to hear about it, because but now it's very accepted in the police department. Before it was very taboo. It was like, police. What do you mean you play games? Now it's
some
a thing,
kind of
right?
some kind of stitch up. Cops don't play games. They're no fun, right?
Right.
That's how it works.
But I brought in a change, and it was great. It was fantastic. I had an amazing career. So what wound up happening with me is in 2014, a year after the Xbox One had released, there was a turn in social media, but more specifically gaming media, that left a sour taste in my mouth on how Xbox was being treated. Now, I support every console. I have everything. I don't play on PC, but I have a Switch, I have a PS5, an Xbox Series X and S. I support everything. I've always have. I've never been like the one console kind of a gamer. I love gaming, so I don't care where I play and what I play as long as I'm having fun. And then some people were telling me, hey, listen, you should check out YouTube. I'm like, YouTube? Like, isn't that just like for kids? Like, what are they, gaming? Turns out there was an amazing bunch of content creators that talked about video games that were just like me. So I was like, I got into watching, the Iron Lords podcast. I got into watching Crossfire with the Mooch Gamer, and that is where it started. I had listened to that particular show, and I had DM'd him, just like you did for me. And I said, hey, listen, do you ever have anyone from the community on the show? And he says, yes, we've done that before. Would you like to come on? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely would I like to come on. So I guest appeared, and for me, at this point, I'm in my mid 40s. I'm like, okay, well, it's the checklist. Go to Hawaii, check, retire, check, do other things, get a new car, check is great. Get on a podcast, talk about video games, check, big check,
done. It's like I've actually seen a lot of tweets about this recently. It's like the 30 plus white guy thing to do is just start a podcast. And there have been so many, especially with the lockdown and the pandemic. People are like, well, I have nothing to do. Podcast. And there have been so many podcasts pop up. And it's been fantastic because there's lots of people that I've known for a while or have seen around that are just getting into their first podcast now. and it's really cool to watch them kind of grow and get their own groove and find out where they're going with that as well. And it's been really, really fun to see.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey because remember my forte was law enforcement. I didn't have any degrees in content creation, software management, advertisement. There's a lot that goes into pushing your brand. And I got onto the show. I did it. A lot of people enjoyed the fresh presence that I brought. Then again, that's not my words. I don't talk about myself. I don't like doing that. And then I got back. He asked me again. And by the third time I jumped on the show, he had gotten so much positive feedback. And I didn't, dude, I was just talking about games. What you see, what's interesting is what you're seeing now, that's how I was in uniform. Like there wasn't like a Batman Bruce Wayne thing. It's just, this is how I was in and out of uniform.
You were just like one constant personality as opposed to dividing work and home. Yeah.
Right. So people dug the fresh, responses that I had. And he asked me to be on as a regular panel member. And at this point, I was packed with excitement because I was like, holy cow, I'm on a podcast. And I spent 2 years there. And what wound up happening is in that 2-year fray, I started my own first podcast, which was Friday mornings, Breakfast with Boom, 10 a.m., 2-hour show, rotating chairs for guests. And I learned on the job how to, run a show, my right topics. And what I wind up finding out is that I enjoyed writing so much that I'm up 4 days a week past midnight writing these shows. And I absolutely love it. It's so much fun. And then, of course, after 2 years there, I had been working there. I had been on the show on Friday evenings. And my wife is off weekends, and what I wanted to do is, I found that it was unfair for her to lose her Friday night.
Right. So I had definitely.
So I had taken my leave. I had stepped away from that show because I wanted to give my wife back her Friday evenings, which we did a lot. Went to the movies, went out shopping, went to dinner, you name it. After a long hard week for her who's still working, it was the right thing to do. And then, hold on. And then what wound up happening, interestingly enough, is I thought about doing an evening podcast on Mondays, which is primetime gaming. And there is an audience there, an audience that comes out every week to check it out, and they enjoy the banter. Last night's show, we had One Bad Mother on from Xbox Era. And we had an incredible adult conversation about what's happening in the gaming industry regarding sexual misconduct. And we spent an hour and 15 on that topic specifically.
Oh, wow.
And it was a
I mean, there's a lot there to discuss and kind of unpack as well. It's a huge issue, and I mean, I know for a lot of people it's only like recently becoming as a shock, but this has been happening for years and years and years. It's just no one's really talked about it, and which is a real shame because it needs to be talked about and spoken up against more, definitely. But yeah, it's there's a lot there. I'm really hoping we can kind of, over the next, let's say 5 years, kind of really root it out and like have it down to pretty well nothing. Because I don't think, knowing people being people, I don't think it'll be going away anytime soon. It'll take like a generation or two. Like, we have to teach our kids and they have to teach their kids. Yeah. It's a very slow process. But now that we've started that catalyst, I think it's important we keep that up, especially with education and discussing the topics as well, to really kind of make sure it's known about.
Yeah, I mean, listen, change is hard. Any kind of change, whether that be in law enforcement, whether that be in your government, or even video games, right? And this is the era of the boys club, I think, has come to an end. I think the early wealthy folks that feel that they don't have or run in the same lane as the common folks like us, That has to come to an end. You can be rich, you can be well off and be wealthy, and still be a good human being, right? We've seen that time and time again. Bill Gates is a perfect example of that. He's one of the richest men in the world, and him and his wife, obviously they had their thing, they separated, but the way that they have conducted themselves as proper human beings, giving back all of this money to causes that they found important, it can happen. Specifically with Activision, well, Bobby Kotick is the guy running the ship, and we talked about it last night of whether or not he needs to be removed, because at the end of the day, the captain of the ship is held responsible for other people's actions. If you don't know what's going on in the company, I understand it's big, but this is something that I'm sure he was made aware of.
Oh
and
yeah, definitely. I don't know him personally, but I feel like if he knew about it, he didn't care. Like
as long as the shareholders are happy.
Exactly, as long as the shareholders are happy and that he's getting his money, which is like more than anyone actually needs.
Ridiculous.
Which is ridiculous. And removing him would be a good start, I think. But again, this is something that is deep seated, not throughout just one company, but throughout the entirety of society. So again, it's back to that education thing. But if we start making big changes now, that ripple effect will only get bigger as we go down the line in generations.
Yeah, 100%. So getting back to my shows, I'm an Xbox guy. That's what they know me on the socials. Xbox guy. I support everything, but I prefer to play an Xbox for a multitude of reasons. One, I like my friends list. I love my achievements more than I like my trophies for PlayStation. I like my controllers. I think the controller, even though as much as I love the DualSense, I like my Elite controller.
Yeah, I've always found the Xbox controller more comfortable. There's something about the way that the joysticks are placed with the PlayStation ones. They're too. I've got quite large hands. Yeah, so you're constantly bashing your hands against each other. And I can't do it. I know the new PS5 controllers are a lot better than their PS4 counterparts now. I haven't had a chance to try one yet, because PS5s don't actually exist. They're a myth.
Yeah, they're kind of like finding a four-leaf clover. That's the reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, but yeah. So I have 2 Xbox shows per week. And what? And you say, well, why 2? Like how different are they? Well, what ended up happening is we saw in the last 18 months a resurgence of Xbox unlike anything we could have ever predicted. Like they have, when talk about an incomplete 180 from the disastrous launch in 2013 and the slow and even some would even call it a crawl to 2017. The 4-year span was not good for Xbox. And listen, they had people in positions that did not want to be a part of it. They didn't want to be a part. Obviously Terry Myerson was a big problem. Obviously good old Donnie D with, hey, listen, if you don't want to be online all the time, I got a console for you. You can't say things like that and to your customers. So they got rid of those folks and they put Phil Spencer in charge. And if we're talking post E3 2018, when they announced the acquisition of those 5 studios plus the creation of the initiative, it wasn't completely, and it's been nothing but rainbows and unicorns for Xbox.
Yeah, they've really ramped up. Like, I know a lot of people probably call it this, but I've dubbed it the Phil Spencer effect. Big Daddy Phil's just come in. He's all right, because he came in and things changed pretty well immediately. Yeah. I think the acquisitions were the year or 2 after, so that would have given them time to actually run those deals and prove them out. And then it's just been non-stop snowballing from there. It's going to be interesting to see how this is in a couple of years, business-wise. Yeah. Because there's going to be a point where it's going to get nearly too big. Because right now, even with everything coming out, it's very, very, especially for just an average game, it's very overwhelming. You've got games left, right, and center. You've got Game Pass, which is just growing
The greatest
by
thing since
insane amounts
sliced
a
bread.
day, right? It's so good. Like I'm concerned for its effects on the rest of the industry. I'm sure the rest of the industry will kind of pick up pace and kind of follow suit eventually. But right now, it's going to get to a point where you're like, well, is it on Game Pass? Yes. Does that mean I'm going to buy it? Probably not, because it's going to be on Game Pass, even though it hasn't been announced yet. Like I had that with with Doom Eternal. I knew Doom 2016 was on Game Pass, and I was like, oh, cool. So I played that one, and I'm like, it's gonna come to Game Pass. I know it is. So I just waited instead of paying for it. Which could have a slight negative effect, but I mean, I'm sure those developers are getting compensated fairly for being on that service, considering they're not really having their games paid for in traditional sales.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're doing it right over there. They're putting the customer first. And a perfect example of this week is Monster for Xbox Game Pass. You have Flight Simulator that released today, and of course the Ascent on Thursday. I mean, it's just been incredible. And there's a lot to look forward to. And you know something? It's going to just make your backlog even more larger than it probably already is, which is fantastic. So I have the Xbox Factor podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Same name, but the way that I write the shows is that each of the 4 shows per week are always different. The only time that there is some repetitive conversation, if some, like the Bethesda deal, that could not be just talked about one day. That thing is talked about for a month.
That was a lot to digest there. There was so much with that.
Yeah, it was a monster deal. So yeah, so I do 4 2-hour shows per week. I'm retired, outside of taking care of the home while my wife still works. That's my job. I love it. I enjoy doing it. I love the interaction with the community. Specifically, I'm as transparent as glass. Everyone knows what I did in my prior career. They know who I am. They obviously know who my wife is, who's a part of the channel in a big way. And I am just enjoying the ride, to be honest.
Yeah, it must be nice. I'm looking forward to retirement when I eventually get there. Just so I can do that. That'll be nice. Just kind of, as long as my hands are still working, I'll be good. I mean, there's adaptive controls now, and VR's getting slowly better. So hopefully, like in the future, like I've got a while, another 30 years before I retire, so I'm fine. But hopefully by then, the technology's there where I don't even have to use my hands. I can just like plug it straight into the brain, and I'm set. Just
that's cool. Yeah.
Chuck me up in a dusty old nursing home with a VR kit on my head. Perfect.
That's great.
I'm set for life. Yep. That's all I'm saving for, is just to pay for the rent. That's all I need.
Yep.
So your 4 shows. How do you try to differentiate them? Because I mean, 4 shows. I mean, is a lot to organize. I mean, even though you're in retirement, you must be a busy dude, because that's a lot of work. Like I run one that's weekly, and I'm exhausted.
It's funny. Look. I'll say this. My dad taught us when we were very young: if you're doing something you love, then it's not work, and that's really what it is. I mean, yes, I do hold myself to a very high standard. Yeah. Simply because there is an audience that I have built, that I have to respect their time. If you want people to come and listen to you speak about whatever it is, for me it's video games for 2 hours. You have to put the work in. And what does that work consist of for me? Well, there are, like I had explained to you in the beginning, my disappointment with the way gaming media has changed. I don't listen to the IGNs and the GameSpots and the Kotakus and those big conglomerates. I don't, because they are extremely biased. And if anyone says otherwise, all you got to do is just read some of the work that they do. Yeah. I like a lot of the smaller sites. I like the VGCs of the world, which is the Video Game Chronicles. I like those guys over there. I like Game Rant. There's this, there's one of the bigger ones that I actually still like, that I feel it has, kept it real, is Game Informer. I like listening to those guys. I like their podcast. And I like the way that their writers write. I respect it, because I'm an old school guy who used to run to the Optimo in the Bronx to grab my magazines, my EGMs, my Game Informers when they were at Funko Land, that were thin as paper then. The Gamers Republic magazine, which was freaking fantastic. And those were great writers back then. And some of the sites that I still listen to seem to have some of those traits, which I appreciate. So I do a lot of reading, and then I take what I ingest from the articles, and then I put it into my own words. So I'm constantly writing, and each what I like to do is I like to have at least 4 topics per show, half an hour per topic. Sometimes they go a little bit longer. Sometimes I'll write a whole show that's 4,000 words, and we'll get to half the content because the conversations become so interesting and unique in conversation that we just don't get to other topics. So I just move them over to another show. But each particular show, the Primetime Gaming on Monday, the bookend Breakfast with Boom, those are multi-plat shows. The 2 middle ones are obviously the Xbox Factor podcast, and there's been so much Xbox news that it's very easy to have 8 topics for those 2 shows. But a lot of the times, like the last week was a little light on news. Even this week's a little light on news. So sometimes you got to be creative, and I'll write original pieces, talking about why I think Banjo-Kazooie needs to come back, or why Microsoft should buy said developer so they can make Killer Instinct. And why that needs to come back in a big way. It's like I said, I think you will receive the rewards as long as you put out the content and how I do it, how I've always done it is I put out content that I know that I would love to listen to. And it has worked out where I'm closing in on 10,000 subs on YouTube, which is pretty good considering I got into the game extremely late.
That is fantastic. Well done. That's awesome.
Thank you.
10,000 subs isn't anything to balk at all. I'll be happy when I get to 100. We're getting there. We used to have like a similar concept where we did a weekly show. This back when there was more of us, obviously. We covered the news. And those dry spells, because there's always like those couple of months in the year where there is just nothing going. There's no news, there's no announcements, there's no weird controversies going on, and they are the most difficult times to write news podcasts because you're like, all right, there's nothing here. And for the most part, we can wing it. We pick a game and we kind of all play it and kind of review it that way and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those gaming droughts are tough. So you generally combat that with like original pieces for the most part.
Yes. Yeah. I love making topics from scratch because there are conversations you're only going to find on my program. Now, granted, I have seen that I'll do a 2-hour show and someone will get a hold of it and be like, hey, listen, I want to talk about what he talked about. I never have a problem with that because then what I'm doing is stoking the fire of conversation, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
And, obviously the same way that I get a lot of the stories from the sites that do all the work, I don't, if I'm going to read verbatim, like if I read from a particular article, like I will today on today's show at noon, I of course give the credit to the writer and the actual site. I never just read and you think it's me that wrote it because I would never do that. That's I don't like that kind of behavior. But a lot of the original material that I do write, I find interesting, and for the most part, a lot of people do as well, especially when you start talking about older games that we haven't talked about in a while, kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Moments ago just talked about that because of your awesome shirt, and I'm like, hey, did you get a chance to look at the new Shredder's Revenge? You're like, I didn't even know. See, so there's a conversation.
As a Turtles fan, maybe I don't remember it. I don't remember it happening. Maybe I heard about the announcement. That's cool, and then just forgot about it. I don't know.
It's possible.
Like there's so much that goes on in a year these days. It's like you can't retain it all. I'm a very simple man with very small memory banks. It makes things difficult.
If there's one franchise that has seen a great start, and I mean, think about this. Back in the days, Konami, they brought us Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles side-scrolling game. I remember playing with my brother for hours. especially when it finally came home to the to the Super Nintendo. Like, could you imagine? Like, crazy. And then
Yeah.
Turtles in Time came out, and it was incredible. And unfortunately, since then, there hasn't been a whole lot of good ones. I mean, the NES one before that was the difficulty was ridiculous. It was just so hard. I never beat that game as a kid, or as a teenager, I should say. And obviously, during the Xbox Summer of Arcade, if you remember that, that was my favorite time in Xbox. They had they had redid the Turtles in Time. I loved it, and you can't play it. You can't play it now unless you have an Xbox 360 because
Oh, really?
you know it's just you can't play it. I like it's not backwards compatible. I looked for it. It's not in the store. But now that they're releasing the new one, which looks it's a complete love letter to anyone that's a Turtles fan, anyone that played the originals, and honestly, people who didn't even play the originals, I think you're gonna dig this 4-player co-op, side-scrolling beat 'em up. That is one of the things that I miss from back in the days. We don't still to this day we have a few. We don't have enough. Like the Streets of Rage 4 was epic. Right, that was done. And they just released new DLC for it. I think we need more of the side-scrolling beat 'em ups.
Yes. I also think we need more couch co-op. I miss couch co-op, man, like so much.
I agree.
Like, I play with I have 3 boys, and I play with them quite often. You know, we get on. They love playing Halo and Apex at the moment. Yeah, just starting to get into that. So yeah, it's forced, and like we have a couple of consoles in the house, so we can kind of. With the crossplay with Apex, we can kind of get a squad together and play, and like one of them will swap out or whatever. But the real magic is with like Halo and the Master Chief Collection. We go on there and we just do like couch co-op 4-player SWAT, and we just like sit on the couch and we can just sit there shit talking each other and jeering and doing lots of dumb stuff, and it is honestly the best experience. And I would love to see that more with games, like, because I mean you're at the point now where you look at like It Takes Two, A Way Out, where there are games designed specifically for couch co-op, and when we ran into that is those side-scrolling beat 'em ups are kind of perfect for it. So seeing more stuff like that I think would be really good. I think the last side-scrolling beat 'em up I played up was Battletoads.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed that.
Fun.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, you know, I know that it wasn't the game that everyone wanted, but I think Delilah Studios did the franchise justice. I thought that the writing was just so good.
It was fantastic.
The cell shading art was just top notch. It's a shame that launched with such controversy, which I you know, and that's the thing. And then a little annoys me about the industry as a whole is that when Nintendo does something, even if it's heinous, it's just Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right? When Sony does something, that's okay, it's Sony. The minute Microsoft does something, even if it's the right thing, it's looked at upon with a microscope that's the size of a building. And everyone, including the gaming media, is really to blame for this. Like I said, listen, social media is always going to be social media. It's an open platform. You're going to get people that I call the keyboard cowboys that will say horrible things because there's nothing will happen to them if they say something racist or sexist or
there's
just straight
absolutely
up
no
mean.
consequences. Like, oh no, this account has been banned. I create another one. You know, there's nothing stopping you, and the anonymity with that as well gives people a lot of extra courage that they really shouldn't have. Because I can guarantee you, a lot of these people would never say anything like this to anybody's face. But
no, of course
the
not.
second they're behind, there's that screen barrier between them. It doesn't matter. They don't give a shit. Right. You know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know, again, that's a great example of a game that should hopefully one day get a proper sequel with the proper funding. Because sometimes Microsoft does things that and not recently that they would do things and they kind of half put the foot in. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to get into the pool, I put my foot in. And you're not if you're not in the pool, you're not in the pool. Just because your foot in the pool doesn't mean you're in the pool. And I mean, I don't expect that to happen any further. We've seen the big moves that they've made and the dedication to the gaming, to gaming, to their customers, more specifically for Xbox Game Pass, which has just exploded on the scene. Again, I remember specifically when I was on the Crossfire podcast, everyone on that was like, "This is going to ruin Xbox. This is going to destroy Xbox. First party branding means nothing anymore." Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No problem at all.
So it was a never was. That was the main talking point. Oh, it's gonna go away in a year, like Microsoft does things. They're gonna fail. And here we are, 25 million plus subscribers later. It has become the standard.
Yeah, it's really stuck. I mean, the initial concern, I think, was kind of justified. Microsoft does have a track record of kind of shutting things down fairly quickly if it's not working. They're fairly quickly, and they're a business, so this isn't working. Get it out the door. We take what we need from it. With things like the most recent one, Mixer.
Yes.
They acquired Mixer. Things didn't go well. I have a pretty strong idea that they were kind of after that FTL technology, mostly to do with their streaming, because not long after that it's when they started talking about Project xCloud, and all that, like really leaning into that with Game Pass as well. So that's kind of what they were kind of after with that acquisition, and they got that. Mixer didn't prove to be profitable or worth kind of maintaining for Microsoft as a company, so they went, see you later. And that's going to happen with large companies. There are things that aren't going to work, and they're just going to cut and run because they can afford to do that. But when they find something that sticks, especially that it generates goodwill, generates good money, and is showing continual growth, there is no way they're going to hinder that at all. And yeah, I think they've really hit the sweet spot with Game Pass, especially their marketing lately has been absolutely like on point. Like it's their strongest form at the moment. Some of the stuff that come out, like the real the 80s and the 90s callbacks with some of the advertising videos.
Great, I loved it.
It's so good.
It's great. Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to use this story. I just saw it pop up on my feed. Now, obviously they have the Xbox Series X fridge.
Yeah,
right. They have the fridge, right? Which I'm buying. I just want you to know that
same.
I have a space.
It's going right here. I'm moving a shelf. It's going to be right there for me.
Yeah,
it's going to
be
brilliant.
I will figure out a place for it because I have to have it. What's crazy is they released a Series S luggage.
Oh, the flight
That's Microsoft.
I saw that today. Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a few friends that have had that sent to them, and it is the coolest thing. Like I thought, okay, it's just going to be like a cool luggage thing with some goodies in it, and you open up, there's a whole portable system.
Yes.
It's incredible.
But again, this is the marketing change that came when I don't recall the man's name that came back. He was a part of the Xbox 360 era. He left. He went to Sprint, and then he went to American Express after that, and then from there he went to Netflix, and Netflix obviously exploded. He came back to Xbox last December. It was his first stint back in the company. He has taken over as the marketing lead for the Xbox Series X and S, and you can see the difference. Like a changing of the guard. The one of the biggest complaints that I've always had with Microsoft for video games, not so much Surface and everything else, has been their not having the pulse on the community when it came to their Xbox brand. And in the last 18 months, my God, it has been a complete 180. Like they have really tapped the pulse of the people, and even the memes, making fun of the refrigerator. They made a refrigerator. They made a fridge.
I think the biggest contrast is like back before this change happened with marketing, Sony and PlayStation were kind of marketing wise were fairly even. They were fairly similar in the way they approach things. When Microsoft changed, PlayStation hasn't so much yet. They've stayed very formal and very kind of they have a process, and which is respectable. This isn't me trying to hang shit on PlayStation at all, but there's a marked difference between PlayStation advertising and Xbox advertising now.
Yeah.
Like PlayStation, it's very kind of on point. It's very like not serious, but it's very expected marketing. Like, you know what you're going to get from a PlayStation ad. You know what you're going to get from a PlayStation conference. Xbox is kind of just throwing that out the window. I was like, you don't know what they're going to get. They're making fridges and portable gaming system suitcases, and it's wild, man. I'm excited to see kind of what happens and how far this goes. Like,
yeah, it's fun, right? They made gaming fun again. They made Xbox gaming fun again, and that's to your point, the Phil Spencer effect.
Yeah.
We have seen. See, one of the things that I mean, there's a lot of things I love about Xbox, but specifically is how the higher ups. I mean, these are corporate positions that in standard corporate America, you don't hear from these folks. You don't hear them on social media. You just don't, because that's not what they do. But now, besides Phil Spencer being front and center, I mean, this is a guy that comes to people's podcasts, right? This is a guy that jumps in and listens to shows, even when they're talking negatively about Xbox, and he understands. I mean, some it's warranted, some is, ridiculous fodder. But what I love about it, it's not just Phil. Like, for instance, Sarah Bond, one of my favorite people at Xbox, who I think is going to be eventually be Phil's successor, in my opinion.
I can see that. Especially
she's very
recently,
smart.
They've really pushed her to the forefront as well. Like, she is there with everything, which is fantastic to see. We would love to see more women in gaming, especially in those kind of positions as well. But yeah. I could totally see that happening. Maybe in like 5 or 6 years, potentially. Depending on when Phil wants to give it up.
It's funny because Phil had been asked during his interview with, I believe he was on Kind of Funny, as a matter of fact, which I'm a big fan of Greg Miller and those guys over there. Love what they do. And he was specifically asked about retirement, and he's like, listen, I really don't have it. Like, I love what I do. Like, I'm doing something that I absolutely love. So I can actually see Phil hanging around another 10 years, to be honest with you. Maybe 6, maybe 8, right? The 10 might be too much, but Sarah Bond, she's young, she's very energetic, she's again, tapped the pulse of the community, very smart, a gamer. She involves her kids in the gaming that she does. I love how Larry Herb is out there. I was able to interview Major Nelson in 2019 for E3. It was great for the channel.
Incredible.
Yeah. And it's crazy because Microsoft reached out to me, which is, I mean, I only have,
nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I love how everyone gets, is front and center with the community. It's super important. Jason Ronald, the guy that created him and his team, is out there doing podcasts on the Iron Lord talking about how they came up with the Series X. Only Microsoft is doing that. You don't see anyone from Nintendo. Certainly, you don't see anyone from. You don't want Jim Ryan talking, because whenever he does, he puts his foot in his mouth. He's a terrible talker. He's terrible. Even Herman Holtz, who is Phil Spencer's position in Sony, not a great talker. They're very dry, like toast. You know what I'm saying? Whereas when you look at what goes on with Xbox, it's like a party train almost all the time. So, lot to get excited about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nintendo really lost something when they lost Reggie. Reggie was fantastic, Reggie. And I think that's where Phil will be headed. He'll just be like, it'll just be Phil, and even when he's kind of retired from the position, he'll still be around doing stuff.
Yeah.
But he just won't be an active part of the business anymore. He'll just be like the platform celebrities. Oh, Phil Spencer, he comes in and drops his words of wisdom and then leaves.
You know what that's missing from PlayStation, who I loved? Sean Layden. Sean was a proper gentleman. He was the brand. He was the Phil Spencer. He came out on stage and he was excited and he was animated and he was fun. and he disappeared almost overnight, and no one knew what happened to him. I mean, obviously, we know what happened to him. Sony gave him the packing slip, the pink slip, so to speak, and they just closed out his career on what the H happened, right? And that's what they're missing. That's what they're missing. I know that they're the market leader and the brand leader and all this other stuff, but you can only maintain that if you continue to maintain it. And they have dropped the ball. Obviously, obviously part of the conversation that we started with the sexual misconduct, Insomniac Games was just outed by one of a former employee that has a significant amount of documentation from other women that careers were ruined. I mean, I'm a huge Ted Price fan. Like, I love that guy. I think he's fantastic. And to hear that disappointed me terribly because
I can imagine. Yeah.
The
whole situation is disappointing. But especially when it's kind of someone you look up to and you think, oh no, there's no possible way. They seem like such a nice person, and that happens. Like it really takes you back. Like that little bit extra. It's like, wow, that's it really makes you question a lot.
Very disappointing, for sure.
Which is kind of healthy now. We're going through and we're questioning everything, which I think is very important. But yeah, disappointing, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, again, there's just I will say this, regardless of what console you own, and I say this all the time. See, supporting all three consoles is a privilege. It's not a right. Some people are just not in that position to do it, whether that be through financial, because gaming's expensive. It's a thing, right? It's a cost.
Definitely not a cheap hobby. No.
Yeah, and well, the Xbox Game Pass definitely saves the money for sure. Which is great.
But the amount of extra hard drives I've had to buy, no, not really. I just had to because I play primarily on PC, and I was like, I'm out of space, and tax time came around. Sweet. So I went and got myself a 4 terabyte hard drive. I'm like, all right, this is fine. The problem was my hard drive was drawing too much power for my PC, so then I had to go and update my power system, and I was like, oh no. So it's fine now, and I can probably afford another 4 to 6 terabytes, so I'm future proof for at least 6 months. So Game Pass, we're good.
That's good. Well, especially with Flight Simulator, that's a big one. That's gonna take up a lot, but yeah, I mean, getting back to the supporting the three consoles, it's something that I enjoy doing. I think that as a gamer, if you consider yourself, the quote unquote gamer, it doesn't matter really. At least it shouldn't matter where you play, as long as you're enjoying it. I find equally expansive experiences on all three consoles. I can enjoy Horizon Zero Dawn and what Aloy means to the PlayStation brand as much as I'm going to enjoy Joanna Dark when she releases in 2023. Right? For Nintendo, I'm a Nintendo kid. I got my first Nintendo for my 15th birthday, and back in '85, and I've been a fan ever since. Now, granted, their practices are egregious. There's no doubt about it.
The longer it goes on, the angrier I get at Nintendo. And I was like, okay, you're releasing the same Pokemon game every year, but 2 different versions where there is minimal, and you want full price for the next 4 years. I went to buy, I got a Switch, kind of later on, and I was like, oh cool, I can go play Breath of the Wild and all those really good games that have come out. And I went to go and buy Breath of the Wild on digital because I'm like, I'm here, it's fine, and it was still full price. This is like 4 years after release, and I'm like, excuse me, Nintendo, what are you doing? No, Nintendo, this is bad. So I went down to my local game store and picked it up for $40. I'm like, I'm supporting local Nintendo.
You know what's crazy though? Even at $40, like how many games have released at a third party that will launch on this Friday, and then 60 days from now they're $20, but both digitally and physically. So Nintendo. That's the crazy thing. I only buy physical Nintendo stuff. Like, I won't buy digital because if I ever had to get rid of it, I know I'm going to get top dollar. I know that if I went to GameStop, which is taboo for many, you're getting at least $30, potentially more if if you got trading promotions and stuff. So you could walk away with trading in a game that, well, get $40 and buy something new. I don't do a lot of trading. I like my collections, but I buy Nintendo stuff physically simply because they retain their value so high. It's crazy.
Yeah, the retention value. Like I think one of the local stores I have, it's called CEX, and they have like a bounty board out the front. And so they have like, this is what we're looking for. So, obviously when new consoles come out, there's like, oh, we're looking for trades on this. We'll give you this much. We sell it for this much, yada, yada, yada. And Nintendo stuff is always up there. There's always a Switch in the top 10. There's always a Nintendo game in the top 10. And it's like, it makes money. Like, really, even secondhand. Nintendo's been around for such a long time now too, and because they had such unique characters through like Mario and all that, they've got the nostalgia tapped into the veins, and they are taking full advantage of that.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not excited. For myself as well as my wife, because we played on the N64, the Mario parties, the first 3 were fantastic. We played for hours. So the new one that's coming out this year is a compilation of all their best games, all of the best mini games from across the 10 of them that's been released. So I'm super excited. But again, that's Nintendo tapping into what makes us love video games, and they just know how to do it.
They do. They've got it down pat. They've been doing it for years. I mean, I hate them, but also hats off because
you love them.
I love them. It's such a fucked up relationship.
It really is. It's almost like an abusive relationship. You want to get away, but you can't. It's terrible. It's terrible.
It's not great. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting if Nintendo actually releases something new.
I mean, listen. I'm gonna sit down and not say a lot. I didn't run out and buy and pre-order the OLED Switch. And what's crazy, I know it's lunacy. I upgraded because I had the OG Switch. So when the Mario edition, the red one came out, I bought it. I traded my old one in, got the new one, and the red color on the box looks really nice. In my console, it's horrendous. So I was like, you know what? Let me trade. I reserved it. I'm going to trade this, and I'm going to get 2 1/4 for it, which isn't bad. Which is not bad. Towards the OLED, which because there's a red one also of the OLED, which I didn't want. But the new one, it has the white and black. It's nice. It's like very sleek looking, and that's going to be nice. So I'm going to wind up trading it in. But again, do I actually need it? No. But do I want it because I'm a Nintendo fan? Yeah.
So as someone who primarily plays on console, how did you feel about the Steam Deck announcement last week?
I got very excited because I want it exclusively for Xbox Game Pass use. I'm not a PC guy. Like, I have a nice PC. I don't have a rig. I have a nice PC that could do all of my show production stuff and my video editing and podcasting and stuff like that. And it's fantastic. Touchscreen. It's amazing. My wife bought it for me last year. I got excited because as much as I enjoy the ideology behind Project X Cloud or cloud gaming as they now call it, I hate using the devices that are currently available. Like, I even have the Kishi that you put your phone into.
I've been looking at that one for myself because I need something compact for the train.
It's nice. The controller aspects of it, very nice. My biggest problem with it is I have big hands, very big hands. And I have my phone in a case, that hard plastic case. So when I want to use that thing, I got to take it out of the case. I got to unclick it. I got to take off the rubber. It's a big pain. When you get calls, you get messages. You got to stop what you're doing playing the game. So I have always wanted Microsoft to potentially team up with someone. If they didn't want to make the device, no problem. But at least give us an option of a traditional handheld with a device that uses xCloud. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of PC guys that are going to be doing stuff with the modifications on this thing. A lot of the older arcade games and like the Raspberry Pis of the world, they're going to find how to put that on there, and that's great. For me, I just want to play my Xbox games on a traditional handheld that doesn't feel like it's going to break in my hand. And that's why I pre-ordered the 512. It's expensive, and I don't spend that kind of money often because I'm retired, so it's you got to manage your money. But because I'm not getting it, I'm not on the list until second quarter of 22.
Right, yeah.
I
so
have
you've got some time there to kind of put it away, and yeah. I think that's cool because I think that was one of the coolest things about it. Is like, oh, by the way, this can just run Windows.
Yes,
and that's great.
Yeah.
I think and once the modding community kind of gets a hold of that, because I think now it's kind of limited to a lot of smaller titles. Like we're not getting a lot of massive AAA titles on the Steam Deck itself. It's gonna be a lot of smaller indie titles, which is great because there are some fantastic indie titles that are on PC that are all like, this needs to be on Switch because this would be fantastic as a handheld game, and this is where those are going to shine, and it's going to be the best because I can play my. I can't get them in. I can't get one in Australia yet, but it's probably something I will look into again for similar reasons for why you prefer this over like the mobile phone and the Kishi, just for that convenience of like I don't have to do that, and it's not a Switch, so I can't only not play Nintendo games. I can kind of play whatever I want. But there's a lot of like really cool little twin stick shooters out there, little survival games that'll work perfectly on there, and I'm excited for that. So hopefully they can announce an Australian release date soon. It'd be good. Thank you for coming on, man. I do appreciate you taking the time this morning. I know you've got your own show on. Speaking of, here's your chance. Tell people where to find you. You can find him in about an hour. Not that we're listening live, but
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, super easy, folks. Listen, if you enjoyed the banter, what you see is what you get on camera, off camera. This is how I am in real life. I love gaming. I love the community. I think my involvement with this community has been the best thing for me personally because I get to meet so many people. Much like yourself, you get to interview people, you get to talk to people you never talked before, and that's what life is all about: is new experiences, meeting new people. If you're interested and you want to check out the banter and you want to see my 113,000 tweets or something, it's a ridiculous amount. If you want to follow me at Mr Boomstick XL on Twitter. If you're interested and you want to take it a bit further and you say, hey, listen, I really liked how we talked about video games and I want to check out his content, go to YouTube, type in Double Barrel Gaming, and you'll find Mr. Boomstick, 4 live shows per week. They're all researched properly. They're all written properly. We try to keep it very PG-13. Last night I was a little testy. I don't like to curse, but I dropped a couple of ones because of the subject matter that gets under my skin, especially when you talk about the sexual misconduct. I can't stand that. And so Mr. Boomstick XL on Twitter and Double Barrel Gaming on YouTube. I can almost guarantee that if you check it out, you will not be disappointed.
Fantastic. I can second that. I've been consuming your content more recently because I've only just really found you in the last few months. Fantastic content, guys.
Thank
very
you.
well spoken, very knowledgeable. You should definitely go check him out. For those who are listening, it'll be in the show notes. If you want to get in touch with me on the podcast, if you're new here, you can find us on Twitter at left_pod. We're also on Instagram at 2leftthumbspodcast, and you will find the video version of this uploaded to YouTube at the same time. It'll be there in the announcement tweet at 2leftthumbs.online. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Boomstick, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me. I've had a tremendous amount of fun. Thank you for chatting. And everyone else, I'll chat at you next time. Bye.
Take care, everyone.